Well, good morning, everybody. September the 4th. My gosh, September. Um, the slaughterhouse of failure is not in my destiny. I will persist until I succeed. We have to brand this. I spoke to someone the other day and he's, oh, it's so hard. I'm tired. I don't think I can do this. And, it only takes 2 or 3 years, 4, 5 at the most, to do what it would normally take you 30 or 40 years in a job. Doing what we do, 3, 4, 5 years, what it would normally take you 30 or 40 years to do in a job in terms of a clear path forward. So anyway, today we're going to talk about focus and discipline. And these are two really, really important subjects. So we're gonna go back and forth a little bit with Dan Burke, who is one of our leaders. Obviously, you know him from our group, and he's very, very focused and he's very disciplined, and he's been that way since he was a kid. So therefore, he's got his ducks in a row, and hopefully that's what leaders do. They're disciplined and they're focused. So in discipline, or in focus rather, the idea is to choose 1, 2, maybe 3 goals. And then those become your wildly important goals. You've got to remind yourself of your organization and the top priority of these wildly important goals, these WIGs. Dan, you want to talk a little bit about the WIGs?
Yeah, so we're going to do a 2-part series, right? This week and next week. So this week we're going to focus on focus. We're going to focus on focus and discipline. And then next week we're going to talk about a couple of other topics, engagement and accountability. But, when you're talking about wildly important goals, that comes down to focus. And so, having a strategy is great, and having a plan and process is great, but if you're not going to execute on those, they really don't do you any good, or they're not going to get you to where you want to be as quickly. And these aren't new philosophies or behaviors. We probably all naturally use these. We just don't know how to use them effectively. And so strategy is essentially the plan, and then obviously execution is carrying out that plan. So focus is a big part of that. And as Lawrence mentioned, the wildly important goals, the WIGs, are a super huge part of that, because you want to set goals, but you don't want to have too many goals. So you need to focus, you need to come up with a list of goals, then you need to focus on the goals that are going to give you the best result, either the quickest or whatever your end term WIG is. And you could have 2 or 3 WIGs, but you don't want to have more than 2 or 3. Because then you start to lose focus and you're all over the place. And one of the other concepts is the whirlwind. And the whirlwind is everything that's going on to run a business or run your life. All the extraneous stuff. So I have a lot of new whirlwinds here. We have 2 kids here, homeschooling now online. So we're dealing with trying to keep them focused. We're dealing with trying to keep them keep the internet live, because we've got so many devices now running on the internet. There's a lot of challenges right now, but ultimately, our goal is to just make sure they get as much out of what they can, and which means that we need to keep them focused on the end goal, which is getting as much out of their education as possible the way we're doing it. So in a business, you have all these separate things. You have, bills that need to be paid, rent and insurance and all these other things, and making sure that you have supplies to run your business. But then you have your goals, and you need to focus on a plan to get there. But this can't be just in one person's mind. The leader has to approve the end goals or the WIGs, but the other employees need to know what those goals are as well, or members of the team. And so you need to make sure that everybody's focused on what that ultimate WIG is.
Yeah, and in fact, you said something about execute. So the idea then is to actually take action, to focus, but take action. And there's an old little story about the 5 frogs sitting on a lily pad, and one of them decides to jump in. How many are left? Everybody says, well, 4. No, 5. Because until you actually do it, you've only made a decision, you haven't executed it. So the point is, on our teams, the ideal thing to do is to brainstorm with each member of the team the wig that you've got, and then to strategize and to put into effect and to execute the wig, the wildly important goal. And each one of our team members has a different talent. Each one of us has different things that we bring to the table. So it's important to be able to understand each member of the team, each person we talk to, so that we can push on those strengths, and then we duplicate that as well. So the wildly important goal should not, as Dan said, shouldn't be more than 1 or 2, maybe 3. And those should be very, very, we should focus totally on those, be almost one-track minded and totally dedicated to those only. No distractions and nothing else going on, just those.
Yeah, and so, a lot of that, the wig is what you ultimately need to execute to get there, right? And so, there's a lot of research out there that shows that there's a lot of breakdowns in that execution, and a number of reasons for that. And one of them is, managers and teams or team leaders you don't have the same, you're not on the same wavelength. And so you don't know what the most important goals is. So part of that process is writing those down and making sure that everybody knows what those goals are. And then, a lot of people don't know what to do to achieve that goal. So you need to come up with a plan of how you're going to achieve that goal, and come up with a plan that's going to be the most advantageous to reaching that goal. A couple of things we're going to talk about next week is, one of the pitfalls of that execution is that, there's no way to score, or having a way to be able to keep score of whether you're reaching your goals and how close you're getting to those goals. That can stall execution as well. And then accountability is the other one. People need to be held accountable. And, I had a call this week with a couple of my accounts that are using the device, and they didn't have a plan in place to be held accountable. And they didn't have goals. And so we kind of talked about what they want their goals to be. First, I talked to the business owner about what goals he wanted to set. Is there a volume goal that you want to set for each of these different stores? And then how do you want to reach those, and how are we going to make people accountable? And so that's our execution plan moving forward. And I got all of the team members together on a call, and we talked about these and talked about how we're going to, hit those volume levels and execute on this plan. And, what was interesting was, just by introducing one little thing to them, they called me. I got a call 10 minutes later after we got off the call, and she said, "You know what? I took your advice on that. The next patient that came in, this is how I approached it. And guess what? She signed up for an ADR for $150. And I said, "That's fantastic. You're coachable." So hopefully that's going to increase. And, now that they have a goal in place, it's a wildly important goal that they want to reach for each individual store. Now that they have a goal, it motivates them a little bit more and they're focused, right?
Well, also, whatever the goals are, we then have to be able to go back and analyze to see that goal was executed, or at least the action was taken, and then how did it turn out? because not all of the goals are going to succeed. Some of them may, some of them won't. So that's where we look at this, the measures of lag, what happened, and we try and identify what went well in that execution and what didn't, and focus again and say, well, this is where we need to tweak. So we had a goal, we executed it, and it went well. Fantastic. Now let's work on that. Or we had a goal and it didn't work so well. So what do we need to do to tweak that to make it really more successful? So that's where we have to look at both things. We have to look at what we're going to do, we do it, and then we've got to look and say, okay, what is it that we can actually improve on, or why did we fail? Because like Dan said, it was just a small thing that made this person make a huge difference. That particular account, that he's talking about has had the scanner for quite a while. And by just doing a little bit of something different, it immediately enlightened the whole thing, and it went forward. So now we can see that looking on the action and the reaction. So that's so important to look back on the lag, as well as eventually what the lead is, what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, it's really important to have something that's, a plan in place to measure this. And what a lot of this comes down to is behavioral change. We have to be malleable, focus and execution. We may have been doing things one way for our entire life, and you may have been doing things the wrong way or not the most efficient way. Our whole goal is to be more efficient in this business, work smarter, not harder. And so, constantly need to be looking at what you're doing, what you're focusing on, how you're executing those plans, and be able to be malleable and change.
Good morning.
Change the way you're doing things.
Good morning.
If that's necessary. So, it's really important to be able to measure, as Lawrence said. And if you're measuring and you're not seeing a result, you're going to need to change what you're doing and how you're doing it. So one of the other things I wanted to mention was, when we're talking about the whirlwind, there are all these extraneous things that are kind of keeping us from being focused and executing. The whirlwind can be the biggest enemy of execution, right? And so you need to identify not only what your focus and or how to focus and how to execute, but you also need to identify the whirlwind and what all those things are that are extraneous, that are keeping you from being focused and executing on your plan and your strategy.
Yeah, and there's so many whirlwinds. That's why I'm a little old-fashioned, probably very old-fashioned, but when Facebook came out, for example, and I was told that in order to find out what's going on in the world, I got to stay up with Facebook. For me, that is one of the worst whirlwind distractions there is, because you get hooked into looking at the most trivial, irrelevant nonsense that you have no interest in, and it kind of just grabs into you. And the next thing, you wasted half an hour looking at what is absolutely irrelevant. So this whirlwind of distractions and things that are going on, that for heaven's sake, I am also addicted to watching these opinions. They're not news anymore. It's just opinions on TV. And I'm trying to extricate myself from those, because I stay up until all hours of the night watching the final opinions of what happened in the day. And I try and get to about 6 different channels and so on. Those are horrible distractions and horrible things that we've got to just throw them out and not worry about it, because it takes away from our energy, and it takes away from our 2 or 3 or 4 things of focus. And on the wildly important goals. The wildly important goal right now is to get our teams to achieve their maximum potential. And one of the ways is to be able to have something that we can measure, not only by their money or their pin title, but for example, to say, okay, there's a trip to Punta Cana at the end of the year, by December. let's see how many of us we can achieve to go on that trip. So that is a wildly important goal. Everybody can afford to go to Punta Cana, but how much fun is it if we can all go as a team? So if we make that as a goal, by the way, we're working harder and more smart in achieving our goals, of our financial goals, and of helping everybody with their own goals. And if we help everybody with their goals, that's how we achieve our goal. It's a simple thing. What goes around comes around. And it's the way we should work. We should work by solving everybody's problems, understanding them first, what their problems are, understanding their pains, working on their pains. It could be a financial gain. It could be a time problem. I mean, a financial problem, a time problem, security problem. A lot of people are not sure about where they're going to be in 3 months' time because of the insecurity from their jobs. So our WIGs, important goals, should be focused on something that we can measure, that we can get our teeth into, and that we can understand that we are making a difference, and we're making a difference to everybody, and we see that in our own results and in the results of others.
Yeah, we need, we talked about, having 1 to 3 goals, wildly important goals maximum, because when you have more than that, it takes away from your focus, number one. But you also need to make every one of your WIGs your top priority. And the way to do that is to involve your team and let them create supporting WIGs, right? So if your ultimate goal is to reach a certain pin title, let's say in our business, then your supporting WIGs from your team members need to be that they need to go out and place X amount of scanners, or that's what you need to drive within your team. But place as many scanners as you can also. And then there's a number of ways. There's 4 ways that things that you can use to choose WIGs, and a couple of them we've already talked about, but brainstorming is one of them. Get together with your team, like Lauren said. I'm planning some team calls, with specific legs of the team where we can talk about and brainstorm, different ways of approaching the business, how they're going to reach their goals, what their WIGs are, what my WIGs are, things like that. But then you also need to assess those WIGs, and see which ones are going to get you to where you want it to be. If there's one that's not going to give you the result that you desire, you need to put that one on the back burner, right? So, and then, you need to be able to test these, and then these WIGs need to be stated. They can't just be, written down. They need to be written down somewhere, put on a wall, so it's constantly in your vision, where you're going to be focused on that, and everybody knows what the WIG is, so you can share that with your team members. If you do a weekly newsletter to your team or something like that, you can always have that at the forefront. So, those are just brainstorming, assessing, testing, and stating are ways that you want to choose the goals.
Absolutely, and placing the scanner is one of the goals. And when you achieve that goal of placing the scanner, that's only the very first step, because that scanner then has to be producing, like it's got to be a factory, and it's got to produce. So the first goal is to place a scanner, and then to make that scanner really productive, because it's no use somebody having a scanner. Yay, I placed a scanner. Okay, good for you. Excellent, fabulous, great. That was a week. Now, the second week, part of that is to make that scanner do at least 4,000 points of sale every month, at the very least. And that's the next week. So that there's a constant focus on what we're doing. We're not just doing this and then looking at something else. We're focusing on the placing a scanner, on it producing ADRs, on helping the patients make educated lifestyle choices, on helping the physician or the healthcare professional make money. We're working on that scanner as a source of everything, as a source of income, as a source of health, as a source of everything we can do. And we're helped by whoever has the scanner. And it's also helped by the team that has placed the scanner, or the member of the team. So that we've got it's all combined, so that we're working really as a very close-knit team to make that patient satisfied with the product, with the ADR they're getting, to help that healthcare practitioner place lots of ADRs and therefore hopefully make additional income. And ourselves, it's a boomerang effect. So it's a whole team, total, complete, all closely knit.
All for one and one for all. That's the Three Musketeers, right?
That's it.
That's kind of how we need to view this. But to Lawrence's point, what is your wig? If your wig is to go to Punta Cana, how are you going to do that? You might say to yourself, well, the easiest way to do that is go out and place 10 scanners, right? Maybe, just for instance. That's not the easiest way to do it. The easiest way to do it is go out and place 2 scanners and make sure that those scanners are as productive as possible, right? That may not get you there, but this is just an example. But we need to make those scanners be productive. Like Lawrence said, he calls me every day and he said, hey man, we all have a couple of scanners out there that aren't being productive. You've already got those scanners placed. When I was in med device sales, I would always say, the best business that you have is the business that you already have, right? It's a lot harder to go out and seek new business. So if you already have a scanner and it's not being productive, you've already done the hard work. You've already gotten somebody to be involved in this business and see the vision and see how we can help people and patients. But the easy part is just get them to be productive with it, right? They're already committed. The commitment's the hard part in this, and getting people to invest money to be involved, to get the scanner and the initial healthcare professional kit. That's one of the more difficult parts of this business. That, it should all be all of our goals to use those commitments that we already have to help those scanners be productive.
Absolutely. So the discipline, the focus is getting whatever the wildly, the wig is. And then the discipline is to be able to follow through and to keep on doing what we do. So for example, take the time it takes at the beginning, which may seem like a lot. You may spend an entire morning setting up somebody's scanner or helping them get their scanner right. But that time is an investment, because if they get it right from the beginning, they're not going to be calling you every 5 days or something and say, now what happened here? What do I do there? What do I do that? That becomes part of the whirlwind of distraction. So set up the building correctly at the beginning. Get the scanner, get the person, the group to understand how it works, get everybody to focus on getting it right. One focuses on helping that practice or that whoever get it right as well, even if it takes a little bit longer at the beginning, because it will save time later. And that's where we have the focus and the discipline of trying to get it right. Because those things go hand in hand.
You're absolutely right. And the discipline is basically just learning how to get from point A to point B, right? And so on the call I did yesterday, she said, you know what, we're having a hard time. The scanning's going great, but we're having a hard time getting patients on ADRs. And I said, well, what are you doing? We've been through all of this with her. We've been through the scanning brochure, patient brochure. We've been through talk tracks. We've, how to talk to patients. And, it comes out that she said, oh, I just sit them down at the scanner and I have a bunch of boxes of our supplements there. And I just, I scan them and tell them they're low. And I say, well, which one do you want? And I'm like, that's not the way to go about it. That's not how you're going to get from point A to point B. You need to be more disciplined. You need to talk to them a little bit about what makes this different, what it's measuring. Use the patient brochure. You need to talk about why this is going to make a difference in their health. Otherwise, you can just pull anything off the shelf and say, which one do you want to take? You need to differentiate our product, and having the discipline to actually spend a little bit more time with these patients that you're scanning is going to get you from point A, which is scanning them, patients that are concerned about their health and want to improve their health, to point B, getting them on an ADR of a product that's going to do that and show them that their score is going to increase on the scanner, right? So it just takes that discipline to spend that extra time explaining it to the patients on what this actually means for their overall health and preventing disease and increasing their, decreasing their oxidative stress and things like that.
So at the end of the month, we also have another part of the discipline, which is going over what happened. So if we look at the results of everybody, that's the last couple of days of the month, is where we look back and look on each one of the people who has a scanner or who is working or who is trying or whatever, wherever they are, and to have an x-ray of what happened. That's the lag part of it. That's where we've got to look and see, you know, what went well, what didn't, what went well, what didn't go so well. So, and that is also part of it. We've got to focus on that part because we're looking forward, we're seeing what's happening, and then we analyze what happened. And that's where the next step comes in. So whatever was a mistake, whatever didn't go so well, we've got to fix that to go forward. So it's all part of the focus and discipline.
Yeah, it's all part of the focus and discipline. And there's a third one that we're going to talk about next week, and that's engagement. And then all three of those things kind of come together when we start to hold people accountable, or, you know, for reaching those WIGs. So this all kind of plays, you know, they all work together symbiotically to reach that WIG. And you just need to know how these work. And if, you know, we can share some additional information with you guys on reading a little bit more about how this works next week.
Yep. So we're at right at about that time. So I want to thank everybody for being on the call. Thank you, Dan, as usual, for fantastic input. And honestly, we've got another 4 months of being able to achieve whatever our WIG is, as far as things like Punta Cana or our teams getting forward and so on. Dan said at the beginning, he said about 4 months ago, don't waste this crisis. I'll never forget that. And this is a crisis which is actually still going on. There's a two-tier economy right now. There are people that are doing very well, and there are people that are really, really sucking wind. So we've got to be able to adjust within that. And we are able, because we've got all the ingredients to help people achieve what they want. We're in the possibility of we're in the top tier of being able to, let's say, of the successful people, but we can help all the people that need to be helped. So we've got something really good. So anyway, thanks everybody for being on the call. Thank you, Dan. Thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody. Have a great weekend.
Monday, listen to Scott Bennett on Mondays. Kent and Wendy on Wednesdays. Those are really good calls. Please listen to those. And it all helps to increase our knowledge and function, how we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.